And I'm coming up to my 40th birthday at this point. I'm carrying a lot of debt. I'm divorced, been moving around, just trying to make ends meet. It's not working. And then out of the blue, I get this call from the producer of Star Wars, who I had met like 4 months previously. My name had been put in the hat, female action directors. They were looking to bring a second unit director on. He's like, look, we need a behind the scenes documentary maker. I know this isn't what you do, but J.J. Abrams was directing it. He really wants a filmmaker. Would you come in for a meeting? And I so nearly said no. Because I was like...
And why were you thinking about the no? You know, you're all of a sudden one step away from the kind of hottest man in Hollywood.
But that isn't how it felt to me. How it felt to me was, I've failed.
It was the DVD extra rather than the feature,
rather than the feature, right? Yeah. My sister Esther, who got the BAFTA screening sorted out, she was like, I will kick your ass if you don't take this job.
Well, at least your family had your best interests at heart.
I was like, I can't not do this. And who am I kidding? Like, Star Wars, man. Star Wars. They're going to pay me to be on a Star Wars set, like, for 7 months. Are you joking?
This is the Big Swing podcast, the home of inspiring behind-the-scenes business stories from the world's leading content creators. My name's Sam Barcroft. I started my media company back in 2003 from my bedroom in Tottenham, and 16 years later, I sold it and settled in for my happy ever after, helping out other entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. I've founded Creativeill to share my insights with you, so subscribe to my newsletter at creativeill.co and join me each week on the Big Swing podcast as I chat with a super producer to explore the 3 most important decisions they've made in their quest for success. And stick around for the end when I'll let you in on my personal top takeaways from today's very special guest. Welcome to the Big Swing. This week, I'm so excited to share my amazing conversation with the extraordinary Debs Paterson. Debs is a multi-award-winning drama director who's overcome a near-death experience to become a lauded creative force. She is now a Premier League level drama director, having helmed shows for Netflix, Showtime, and most recently, Disney Plus's new box set original of the legendary Willow saga. This is a story of positivity and resilience against astonishing odds. And perhaps it's no surprise that at the foundation of that perseverance are crystal clear memories that films did not magically arrive fully formed on the cinema screen, but someone, somewhere, made decisions about how they were created.
I actually really clearly remember watching Ghost as like a 13-year-old and thinking that I could have done a better ending. Being unsatisfied with the end, you know, thinking they kind of missed a trick, and then started thinking about like, oh, well, somebody makes a decision about the ending, and I wonder who does that. And then about a year later, I was at my mate's house and on like a Tuesday night, 9:00 movie or something, and then watched Orlando, like Tilda Swinton film, and was like blown away by it. Like I didn't grow up with like very cultural parents. Like my parents are missionaries. And so, you know, didn't go to museums, didn't go to concerts. So like watching Orlando, I didn't really know what it was, but I was like blown away because the main character was like this woman who then was jumping into another life, and she was a man and jumping into a thing, which is kind of how it felt when I was watching films. You know, you go with the hero, whoever it was. And and then it got to the end of the thing and there was like a girl's name had directed it. I was like, oh, cool. All right. Well, that's what I want to do. You know?
So, Deb's path, in her own mind at least, was set. But as we know only too well, no career in the creative industries is straightforward. Deb's got her university degree, but without contacts in the industry and having no family money to help her out, she had to find her own way to make ends meet.
So I got a job selling textbooks door to door in America instead to make some cash. It was awful, but reasonably lucrative. You know, you were allowed to take a 45-minute break, and Starbucks had just launched. I was in San Diego in the like Top Gun military neighborhood.
I know. Yeah.
And then go to Starbucks at lunch and like write down as fast as I could like the ideas that I've been thinking about during the day.
So
Anyway,
you're
the
actually kind of subconsciously coming up with kind of script ideas in the background.
yeah, then through a totally random set of circumstances, like my mum, who's not, like I said, she isn't very cultural or much of a networker. I mean, she's wonderful, but that just isn't her bag. They were in Singapore at that time and they went to a barbecue of a church friend. And there was a production assistant there who told my mum, oh, they're looking for like a female anchor for this football show in Singapore. I was like, screw it. Spent all the money on that I'd earned selling books, quit that job, bought a ticket to Singapore, went into the production office. I was like, can you give me a screen test? And they were like, sure. They were like, how much do you know about football? And I had played football in college, like, and we'd always, as a family, we'd all played it a lot. But I didn't know loads about the Premiership. And they were like, okay, well, if you can name all of the teams in the Premiership, you got the job. And I was like, if I give you
Oh
half,
no.
you have to give it me. So I got 10 out of
50%.
20.
Did you? And you scraped it. You
I
scraped
scraped
it.
it.
Oh,
But
that's
by
amazing.
the end of the year, man, I knew my shit. Like, I really knew my shit.
Yeah,
I
of
was
course.
co-producing
Because
the show as well as presenting it by the end of the year. It
amazing.
was like
So,
prime time, Saturday night, Sunday night, live TV. It was, I mean, it was a laugh. It was mental.
so not being funny, but you're the kind of Gary Lineker of Singapore, or the
I
Gabby
was
Logan.
the Gabby Logan, right?
It's really interesting to think that you're probably one of the first female anchors of a EPL show, right?
It was really fun,
Amazing.
but also I was much more interested in the editing and producing thing than I was in like, you know, saying the same thing every week with different names. So during the course of that year, convinced the production company to like let me use their cameras to make a documentary. So I made a little doc and that showed at festivals. Was like putting together applications for film school and managed to get like a scholarship from Singapore for film school. And then September 11 happened and the funding went away. And I'd quit the presenting job by this time. So I
Right.
found myself back in England, no longer with the scholarship, no job. I like put in a few like presenting feelers in the UK and everyone was like, no. So sort of started from scratch in the UK.
And it was as Debs was rebuilding her career in England that her life fell apart.
I was 25. I was driving a friend home from a conference in Derbyshire, about 5 minutes away from dropping off in Cambridge. Evidently, we had this head-on collision that neither of us remember. Woke up 2 days later in intensive care. My last memory is turning off the M1, which is an hour away from where the crash happened. Like, it was tea time on a Sunday night, November, pitch black, bad weather. I don't know what happened. All I
No.
know is next thing was I was inside a dream in like a corridor in my head, and there were loads of doors, and I knew I was in a dream because like if I went through the doors, it wasn't like a hotel room or something. On the other side, it was like a world, like a forest with some kind of weird element to it. Like there were ponds, but it wasn't a real pond. It was like a mirror, so you'd like tap on it instead of be able to step in it, and
Right.
then come back in the corridor and then go in another one. And it was like that was a sea, but I could stand on the sea because like there was a crust underneath that I could walk on, and then got through the crust and there was this whole like underwater world. But because I'd gone into this underwater world, then the sharks got in and started wrecking everything. I mean, it was like mad stuff. And then by this time I was like, oh well, this is definitely a dream, and I understand that this is a dream. So this one door down the end of the corridor that I sort of knew I didn't want to go in, which is why I kept going on the other ones. I was like, yeah, I'm sort of down, I'm done with this now. Like, if I go in that room that I don't want to go in and I don't like it in there, I can just come back to the corridor because it's a dream and it'll be fine. I'll just wake up.
Mm. Mm.
And and so went in that room, and then there was like sort of tiled ceiling and green curtains and beeping noises and worried voices, and I was like, oh, hospital dream. Like, I don't think I've ever had a hospital dream before in my life.
Mm.
So I was kind of listening to them. I was listening to them talk about spinal injuries, and I knew that they sounded really worried. And I was trying to like understand the situation. And while I was kind of focusing on like, oh, what's going on here?
Mm.
Like, I can't get out of this situation. I can't get back in the corridor. I can't wake up and leave it. I'm like trapped in here, and my body is like being cemented into a corpse, and I can't get out, and they can't get in. And oh no,
Mm.
and I don't know what's happened. And the
Wow.
yeah, it was, yeah, I don't recommend it as a moment.
No.
Um, yeah, and then it was all trying to. Then my next, I don't know how quickly it happened, but I felt like I shrank to tiny inside this huge corpse. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But felt completely alone. Like, I can't get out, and nobody can get in. But then had this weird conversation with God, of like, oh, you're in here. Do you know what I mean? That's nice to know that you're there. I'm
Mm.
really fucking angry with you right now. Like, why has this
Oh.
happened?
Yeah.
Like literally, what's the point? Why did I ever like trust you if this was going to happen? And but there was this amazing like answer of like, well, if I'm not enough for you now, then I wasn't enough in the first place. So am I enough for you now? I was like, I don't know. Let's find out. So it was like this weird little beginning a journey thing in the middle of that whole madness of like, let's understand what the world is now in these circumstances, if that makes any sense.
God, how fascinating. And do you think that was about you taking decisions about wanting to survive at that stage?
I can only speak to my own experience, but like, I've never fought harder for anything in my life than, like for that week in intensive care. Like, every molecule, every day, every hour was like fighting to hang on, like viscerally fighting, exhaustingly
Mm.
fighting to try and hang on. Do you know what I mean? And I remember waiting for the like needing somebody to either say in my earshot or like think to tell me um, whether my neck was broken or not, because that was my line. Like, I figured, I'm up for this. Like, I'm up for fighting to do this, no matter what else is messed up. If my neck isn't broken, but if my neck was broken, if they said I was paralyzed, I had already decided I was going to go. And that's
Wow.
like tremendously humbling to realize there are people who get that news that that's happened and they keep fighting. Like, because I wouldn't have done it. Like,
Goodness.
it's
Yeah.
very, very, very humbling. you
Yeah.
know.
And but listen, it's incredible to think that you did it. Like you
Well, I
went
mean,
up against that huge, crazy challenge, and you did stay there. You did keep going, right?
I know I fought with everything I had, but I also know I was lucky to be in a hospital that was one of the best in Cambridge. It's a student hospital. The thing that was supposed to kill me immediately was my liver had exploded, and this guy like made a new way of keeping a liver together. And then my friend was in the lecture the next day where he was explaining what they did. Like, there's no world where I take credit for the fact that I'm still here. I just know my part in it was I had to fight with everything that I had.
And do you feel like there's a kind of a pre-accident Debs and a post-accident
Yeah,
Debs in your personality?
1,000%. It felt like, when somebody's like making a pot on a wheel and they decide it doesn't work, you just squish it and you start do you know what I mean? It felt like one of those things.
Wow. And as you're coming out of that experience and starting to think about your mortality, what got you back into your kind of passion for filmmaking and everything?
I had a different relationship with perfectionism after that, partly because I was covered in scars, I think. I'd always had body image issues. I'm like 6 feet tall, and I'm strong, let's just put it that way. I had sisters that had modeled. I was big and strong rather than the emaciated 90s waifs that we were all supposed to be. So waking up with a load of scars, I had this moment of suddenly realizing I am never getting rid of these scars. I mean, it's like a pillow crease now, but it used to be quite badass, like along one side of my face. And I had this moment of like, again feeling claustrophobic, of like the failure of it is going to be on me forever. to me, that's God, definitely. Just going, well, hang on though, but how do you think I see those scars? Like
Okay.
you
Yeah.
look at it like it's a mistake, or it's a, something awful that's tattooed on you. How do you think I see them? And I suddenly saw it from this completely different way of like, oh, you see it like that was a thing that was fucked up, and now it's fine. Now it works. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The win rather than the
Yeah,
loss, right?
like it was broken and now it's fixed.
Mm.
Like, and it just changed it completely. And I, in my head, that like relates to perfectionism as well. Like it is not, the Leonard Cohen line, like there's cracks in everything. That's where the light gets in. Like, or just trying to understand like the imperfections of the things that make things brilliant. Like flow is what you need, not perfection. And I don't think I'd understood that before.
So it gave you that whole nother level of insight and
Yeah.
appreciation.
The thrill of wearing your story in such a way that people can ask about it rather than not knowing that it's there. Like it flipped it completely in my head.
And did that kind of go against the whole kind of film perfectionist thing that these auteurs are the heroes kind of thing and that everything's perfect?
I think it liberated, because I do think that's I think there's a narrative around success. The idea that something comes out fully formed, like filmmaking is, it's alchemy. It's the relationship between the clarity of an idea that gives everybody focus, and the invite, the space to bring their stuff to the table. That relationship is what filmmaking is, and it's imprecise.
Mm.
It changes
Mm.
with the people, it changes with the scene, it changes with the circumstances, it changes with the weather.
Deb's road to recovery was long and hard. She was in traction for 3 months, her voice was paralysed for 5 months, and it took 3 years before she had the strength to walk normally again. But life didn't stop. Debs got married, started a new career as a web designer, and made short documentaries for local churches and charities. Yet she yearned to find a way back into filmmaking, and during a trip to visit her grandmother in Rwanda, she became inspired by the extraordinary true story of kids from opposing tribes who'd protected each other during a school shooting. Debs felt she had to tell the story of their heroic humanity in a short drama film and share it with the world. But the only question was how? Time for Deb's first big swing.
I knew nothing about anything, but I had some mates who were shooting like a charity video in Uganda who I knew were really talented. And they were like, look, if you can shoot in April, we'll come over the border and we'll shoot with you. My ex-husband was a composer and he would write the music. There'd just been this thing started called the Rwanda Cinema Centre. So it was like, oh, we can borrow some lights from them. We can do the rehearsals, the auditions through them. Um, like we were just making it up, man. But I knew it was a story, and we were working with survivors from the shooting who came to the school and helped us get the details right. In the school that where it happened said that we could film there, and like local police said that we could borrow their AK-47s every day, but only at 4:00. So, like,
4 o'clock for the shooter. Oh my
so we could
God.
only shoot the attack scenes after like 4:00 every day.
And what were the stakes, Debs? Because like that's hard to pull that together. What were you battling against to go for this, to make it?
At a selfish level, it was my ex. He said to me, I don't believe you want to be a filmmaker because you don't do anything about it. You just talk. So it was at one level, it was like, I'll show you. At another level, it was, I knew I wanted to do it and I knew I needed to try. And I figured the way to try was to have a story that I believe needed to get into the world. And I wanted to make stuff that a lot of people would be impacted. That's always was my reason to want to do this. It still is my reason to want to do this.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to know why you're doing what you're doing, and it's brilliant to be able to call it something and to really be able to articulate it as well as you do. And yeah, if you've got a great story, you've got 100 times better chance of connecting, right? Because humans are just compelled towards really impactful stories. And you knew by the time you'd kind of dug this out, you knew it was big, right?
The challenge was like, how can I put myself and other people in the experience of what these kids went through? That's what I wanted to
Right.
do.
And so
And
you
the
did it.
and you achieved it, and you actually went from coming up with this idea to getting it done. That must have felt
Yeah,
remarkable after what you'd been through with your crash, to actually kind of walk out of that edit knowing you'd actually done it.
I was so didn't know what I was doing. Like, we just about managed to scrape together enough money to buy our flights, and then on the plane realised it's going to cost £2,600 of real money to do this, and I didn't have any money whatsoever. So I was like, oh crap! And so I wrote an email as the plane was about to take off to everyone I knew, saying, look, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is how much it's going to cost. We're getting on the plane right now. If anyone feels like, please, could you, thanks. And then by the time the plane landed, we had been pledged £2,600. Like exactly. It was in three gifts. One was £2,000, one was £500, and one was £100.
That's like the OG crowdfunding.
But like we did, I mean, I forgot about catering. We were staying in a village in the middle of nowhere. Like the school said that we could eat their lunch, which, by the way, the like Kigali Rwandan actors were like, we're not eating that. It was basic. And then in the evening, I hadn't thought to check whether there would be any restaurants open. So like we got back, everyone was so hungry and there was nowhere. And so we had to go to this bar. And so I've got this whole like cast and crew. There's like pornographic music videos on the TV. The restaurant killed a goat, then cooked the goat. And it took ages. It took like 2 hours or something. It was really bad.
Anyway, you made it. You made a movie. You got a film out of it. And that's remarkable. With all these people you were asking money from, you were putting quite a lot on the line.
It was the wasting people's money, wasting people's time, not telling the story well. That felt like a thing.
Okay,
but I didn't. The big swing at that point was, can we pull it off? I don't know if we can. That was the thing that was brave.
Right. Yeah.
And will anyone want to watch it when it's done? Are we going to fail to get it out there?
What did your ex say when you actually went and did it?
Well, he was brilliant. To be fair to him, he did an amazing soundtrack for it. And he also, we got through 4 generators in 5 days, and he was running around the Rwandan countryside trying to figure out where to find. He was amazing. Like, he was on board. And
that kind of kicked off your career in filmmaking proper, right?
So my sister just ran round screening houses until somebody at BAFTA said, oh yeah, you can screen it here. We won't charge you any money. So we did like a full-on BAFTA screening. And that was the moment of realizing like this does work and it's having an effect on people. And some producers came to that and then said, we want to do more stuff.
And the offers did come, and Debs took them up with glee. She directed her amazing debut feature film, Africa United, about soccer mad kids crossing Africa to get to the South African World Cup. And TV gigs followed, directing episodes of Humans and Harlots. But Debs was green to the politics of the industry, and soon the offers started drying up. She had hit an invisible glass ceiling and couldn't progress. Every job Debs interviewed for, she got down to the last few candidates, but was never picked. 10 years after her short film screened at festivals around the world to huge acclaim, Debs' career was once again on the rocks. Maybe some dreams just aren't meant to be.
My dad says, is there a point where you're going to think again?
Yeah.
This is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I wasn't even mad at him for not believing in me. It was a really rational, quite caring question to ask. And I was like, okay, well, if nothing shifts by my 40th birthday, I will. I don't know what that means to think again, but I will. Anyway, I'm doing these interviews for gigs, and I think I'm going to get one of them. Like, it's going very well, I think. And then it was like a week before my birthday, the same thing happens. Like, I'm to the last 2, and I'm sorry, we went the other way. And then out of the blue, I get this call from the producer of Star Wars, who I had met like 4 months previously. My name had been put in the hat. He's like, look, we need a behind the scenes documentary maker. J.J. Abrams was directing it. He really wants a filmmaker. He doesn't want like a marketing person. He wants a filmmaker. Would you come in for a meeting? And I so nearly said no. Because I was like...
And why were you thinking about the no? Because, you know, you're all of a sudden one step away from the kind of hottest man in Hollywood.
But that isn't how it felt to me. How it felt to me was, I've failed at what I want to do, which is get hired again in TV. And because I've failed, I'm being offered behind the scenes, which wasn't the thing that I was trying to do.
It was the DVD extra rather than the feature, yeah?
I had made a feature and I had been wanting to make more features.
Mhm.
And now I was, DVD extra. That's exactly what it was.
So it felt like your second big swing then, really, like whether or not to take this offer.
It absolutely did. And it felt like I was running the risk of being laughed out of the industry, or admitting that I'd failed, maybe admitting that
Right.
I wasn't any good. That was all the messaging in my head. That same sister, my sister Esther, who got the BAFTA screening sorted out, she was like, "I will kick your ass if you don't take this job."
Well, at least your family had your best interests at heart, even if they weren't necessarily telling you what you wanted to hear.
I think part of the reason stuff hadn't been flowing was because I was struggling with, can I be the kind of person that I want to be, i.e. decent to other people and healthy, and be a successful director. It didn't feel like there were very many examples of that. This idea of like force of nature, flattening everybody else, was the model that I had come across, and I knew a lot of people that were really not thriving in that environment, and I didn't know how to.
Let's be honest, there's not very many women who are directors, are there? So all of a sudden you're surrounded by men, which isn't always ideal in terms of a thoughtful and welcoming industry, right?
I would say there's two parts to that. Like, one, I definitely don't think it's the case that it's only men who are toxic. Like, I have been myself a toxic female leader, and I know other ones, and I know completely wonderful male leaders. But it's 100% true what you're saying, that when you're a female director, there's a target on your back that everyone's keen to pin anything, whether it's your fault or not your fault. And it's a different world now than it was 10 years ago. I hope that stays that way,
What were you worried about in terms of saying yes, and what kind of tipped you towards accepting the role?
I asked around about JJ, and everybody said he's one of the really good ones.
Right.
The idea of like being around somebody who is a really good human being and doing massive stuff. And who am I kidding? Like, Star Wars, man. Star Wars. They're going to pay me to be on a Star Wars set, like, for 7 months. Are you joking? And the pitch was, Kathy and JJ are keen to bring female filmmakers into the Lucas, the Star Wars stuff. And I was like, that might be so much BS just to get me to do the thing, because I knew the producer wanted it sorted. He's a very good guy, but I knew he also just needed the problem solved. And so I was like, well, I'm going to say to them, I'll do it if you pay me a TV directing rate, which is more than they wanted to pay. But I figured then they'll know that they want me to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Debs' documentary film, The Skywalker Legacy, is up there with the very best of its genre. It's an exciting, intimate and moving tribute to the talent and love that was poured into an iconic new chapter of the epic Star Wars saga. And making it changed how Debs saw herself and her career.
The brilliant thing about that, the thing that I totally underestimated, I think, about doing it, was it cleared my mind of all ways that I thought things should happen. Do you know what I mean? I was like off-piste at that point. Like, this isn't going to do anything for me professionally, so let's just make it good, is what I thought at the time. Obviously, it was idiotic. But let's just get to the heart of it, follow the instincts, make it as good as it can be for what it should be. It wasn't cynical. I think what I lost, once I was kind of in the industry, the thing that had been my superpower prior, which was like, follow your nose and tell the story rather than what do people need and what are they paying you for and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
It's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, but it is,
one.
because I mean, even making this podcast for me, I've been making stuff for 25 years. I stopped making stuff when I sold my company for a few years. And the joy of now making this because I want to make it rather than because I feel I should, or I've got to pay bills, or all those other real life pressures, is 10 times, 100 times more enjoyable. So that must have felt like a massive reset for you in a way.
It reset's the right word, like proper, like molecular reset, genuinely.
Despite having rebuilt her career several times over, Debs still wasn't quite getting the job she craved. She was working for top-rated shows with great crews and generous budgets, but that spark, that passion wasn't quite there. Until While shooting the fantasy drama A Discovery of Witches in Wales, Debs heard that one of her favourite films from childhood, Willow, was being rebooted in a brand new box set by Disney+. This was the project she'd been waiting for. But could she get the gig? Time for Debs' third big swing.
In my mind, they'll bring directors out, like The Mandalorian just come out, they'll bring those guys over and like it'll all be sewn up. And I was with the, we were tech wrecking on Discovery of Witches, and the production designer is a super talented guy called Armin Jones, did all the like Sherlock stuff, Dracula, that kind of thing. On recce's, you like scouting locations, you spend ages in the car. So always chit-chatting as you go.
Yeah.
And he was going on and on about Willow. And I was like, oh, sure, yeah. And then the DP, Katie, who's great, she was like, Debs, I think Arwell is implying that you should reach out to them about Willow. Okay. And I was like, no, are you? And he was like, yes. And I was like, so whoa, funny. No, surely not. They'll be, surely not. That's crazy. And anyway, it just stuck in my brain. And I was thinking about it over the weekend. And over the weekend, I was like, all right, I think I know how to kind of phrase that email. It says, screw it. And put together an email to Kathy Kennedy, basically saying, look, here's the thing. Me and my sisters grew up quoting Willow. We're obsessed with it. We still quote it now, genuinely. I've just worked nearly at this budget level with the crew that's going to be on the show. If your dance card isn't full, you have to let me interview. What do you think? And she wrote back.
I'm going to pause you there. Hold on a minute. Yeah. I'm going to pause you there.
Yeah.
That is a big swing, isn't it?
It is a big swing.
Because she is possibly the most powerful woman in Hollywood right now.
Right up there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd built a relationship off the back of one project. So that relationship is probably one of your most precious potential relationships over the rest of your career. And that's a card that I would imagine you were keeping very carefully at the back of your deck of cards as a very important card to play at some point.
I had real fun working with her.
Great.
She's extremely smart. She's a consummate filmmaker. She's a proper badass. The swing was, are they going to see me in this way? Am I out of my league? Am I a pretender? That was the thing that I needed to know. I needed to know. What I had by the end of that weekend was, I can write this email without jeopardizing the relationship.
Asymmetric risk, potentially amazing upside with not too bad a downside.
Yeah, the downside would be I would be gutted, but it was a big swing anyway. It wouldn't be catastrophic.
And so, all of a sudden, you open up your email. What happens next?
She came back really fast. She was really friendly. She responded to the chatty stuff in the email, and she said, "You're on our list already. We'd love to have the interview."
What can I say? Debs got the job, and she knocked it out the park. If you haven't already, check out Willow on Disney Plus and judge for yourself. It's hilarious, exciting, thought-provoking, and moving. A real treat. Now, before we hear which of Deb's big swings she believes was the one that made all the difference, I want to tell you about next week's episode. Jonathan Skogmo is an amazing entrepreneur and innovator who pioneered a new business model for the social media age. He is the genius behind Jukin Media, the company that found a way to turn home videos into viral sensations. John is the OG of UGC. That's user-generated content to you and me. And I know you're going to love his insights in how to forge a successful pioneering business model in an emerging market. Now, back to Debs. Which of her big swings does she feel made all the difference? Was it number 1, following her heart and overcoming epic odds to make a career-launching short film in Rwanda? Or number 2, swallowing her own expectations of how her career should be and signing on for the behind-the-scenes Star Wars documentary? Or was it number 3, having the courage of her convictions to put herself forward for an elite-level job, working in the way she'd always dreamed of?
Hard to quantify because I wouldn't be here without any of them. I think it's probably between Rwanda and the doc, but do you know what? I'm going to say the doc because my ego really nearly stopped me doing that. My strong sense of no, it must be this way nearly stopped me doing that, and being willing to put that down and being willing to let the universe know best unclogged something that had been clogged up in me for like 7 years, and let me get back in the flow, So I think that's the one. I never want to forget that, I'm sure I'll get stuck again in different ways, in different times, whatever. I'd never want to forget that sometimes you don't have to know best. Sometimes you just have to go through the door that opens,
Amazing. Well, Debs, you've always been an inspiration to me for the time I've known you. To get through what you've been through and to prosper in the way you have is just remarkable and life affirming and brilliant. And to do it with such a great spirit and a smile on your face is just, you bring light into all of our lives, So thank you so much for joining me on the big swing today.
I remember our first conversation on that, on a bus in Dublin, and I remember thinking you're one of the most genuine, interesting, fun people that I know, and thank you for what you do, man.
So that was my conversation with Debs Paterson. I'm over the moon that she's done so very well despite all the challenges she's had, and she's living her best life, figuring out now which of the many opportunities she's going to take to direct something again that will be brilliant. And I took 3 big lessons from my conversation with Debs. Number 1, strength and courage. Oh my God, she's off the charts. What Debs has been through is literally unbelievable. Having that terrible car crash, 5 months to be able to talk again, 3 years to be able to walk again properly. And this woman is now a top Hollywood director off the back of that. Unbelievable. So strength and courage. If you are strong like Debs and you just keep going, things will fall your way. Whatever happens, they will fall your way in the end. Number 2, adaptability. When Debs didn't want to be a doc director, but that was the gig she was offered, she swallowed her pride. She was humble. She took the advice of her sister and she went for it. And being adaptable is a surefire way to get the success you deserve. If you are locked into a single viewpoint, then that can be very difficult and it can actually be really bad for your career. So adaptability, another superpower of Debs. And the third thing I remembered when I was listening back to our conversation was how important it is just to go for it. Debs is there in Wales chatting to colleagues about Willow and how amazing it was and how amazing the new show's going to be. And they're like, you got to go for it, Debs. And she was brave enough to play her ace card, to get onto the producer and to say, I'm your person for this. I'm the woman to direct this. And it just shows she was already on the list. But sometimes you just have to go for it, come what may. And it's something I've used in my past that's worked really well for me. People don't know you're keen unless you tell them. They're not mind readers. So thank you so much, Debs, for being so open, honest, and warm and thoughtful in our conversation. And you guys, go out there, next time you're having a bad day, think of how brave Debs was and how well that turned out for her. Thanks for listening to The Big Swing.
The Big Swing podcast is produced in association with the amazing Spirit Studios. Our executive producer is Fred Casella. Our sound designer is Will Horrocks. And The Big Swing was created by me, Sam Barcroft.